Well, good afternoon, friends. Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo and Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to thank you guys for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, this literally does not work. So let's get open for business here. And let's wake up the football gods here on this thirsty Thursday. My God, the time is literally flying by. I can't believe it is Thursday afternoon. Tomorrow is Friday. It's almost another freaking weekend, and I'm happy as can be because actually I'm going to see one of you great fans, great fans, Jet D. Jet D is coming up and dealing with Big Red. Big Red, my truck, my work truck. My work truck that we have been through so much together. It's just not enough space for Big Red and Black Star. And I, unfortunately, am not one of those shade tree mechanics. And it's time that she go to somebody who can take care of her needs on a regular basis because it's costing me a fortune to keep her on the road. I mean, she's been a great truck. I mean, she has done everything I've asked, but it's just time to move on and start anew. But Jet D, he's one of those guys. He's like freaking MacGyver. He can fix anything. That Jet D, he used to be a bull rider, believe it or not. Bull rider. I was going past this country airport and they had skydivers and things. I was like, man, check this out. They skydiving. Jet D, of course, he said, I've been skydiving there before. I'm like, damn, this mother humper has done everything. So he's going to come up and he's going to take care of changing the pulley on the Big Red, and he's going to give Big Red a new home. It's going to be hard, though. It's going to be hard for me to say goodbye. How do I say goodbye to what we had? All the good times that made me laugh, I want them back. Okay, all right, enough of that. Okay, so I hear Zeke Elliott is a little pissed off. They have, pro football. The boys at Pro Football Focus are doing a list of positions. And the list of best running back, I'm sorry, this wasn't Pro Football, this was ESPN. Sorry, excuse me. Didn't mean to slander you at Pro Football Focus by calling you ESPN. But ESPN has their list of best running backs in 2020. And it's no surprise that Zeke Elliott is number 3 because they got Barkley and Christian McCaffrey in front of him, right? But there was one NFL executive that actually ranked Zeke Elliott as the 11th best back in football. And it's funny because Zeke Elliott, he was kind of pissed, but he tried to make a joke out of it, though, too. So when Zeke found out about the NFL coach ranking him at number 11, his response is with a hilarious tweet, whatever that is faded, laugh out loud. But, in every joke, there is a little bit of seriousness. And here's the thing. I touched on this last year. And see, there's a couple of things. You can follow statistics, and it doesn't mean it always works out. But, when quarterbacks start their first year, they have a thing that's called, the sophomore slump, where basically the quarterbacks come back down to earth. It typically happens. It doesn't happen always. In fact, you look at Carson Wentz being the statistic on that because Carson Wentz's best season was his sophomore season. But you could look at Baker Mayfield, who had a great rookie season last year. He definitely had a sophomore slump. We'll see if he recovers. You could look at Dak Prescott's rookie season, which was really good, and then the second one wasn't quite as good, although there were other extenuating circumstances. You lost Zeke for 6 games. Sean Lee was gone, which hurt the team, as well as losing Tyron Smith and having Chaz Green step in an 8-sack performance by the Atlanta Falcons. So, in grand scheme of things, had they won one more game, they would have been in the playoffs. And, you could look at some of those and say, had they made the playoffs, would you still look and say that year was as bad as it was? But be that as it may, typically things happen. And this is what I said about Dak Prescott with the power of 4 last year. Typically, franchise quarterbacks, their 4th year is the year that they take a big leap. You could look at Russell Wilson, who his numbers were right around 32, 3,300 yards, 25 TDs his first 3 years, but his 4th year was like the big explosion in yardage. You could look at Big Ben, you could look at Troy Aikman. Most quarterbacks, their 4th year was like the big year that they took the step up and elevated and became, ended up being on a new plateau. And in the same regard that you can look at those kind of statistics, when you look at running backs, typically speaking, the 4th year is about the pinnacle of their career. That's not to say that everyone is the same, because if we look at, let's say, Father Time here, Adrian Peterson in his 4th year, let me pull this up a little closer here. I don't know if you guys can see this now. But Adrian Peterson in his 4th year averaged 86 yards a game, which was down from his 95, right? But then again, a couple of years later, he ended up having a monster season where he had this 2,097 yard season with 131 yards. Now, that's more of the exception than the rule, because when you look at Zeke Elliott's numbers, Zeke Elliott, oh boy, Zeke Elliott averaged 5.1 yards average his rookie year, 108 yards a game. Second year, he dropped to 4.1, and you can kind of say some of that may be because of dealing with the am I going to be suspended and the fight back and forth and so forth, and being suspended for 6 games. But it went down to 4.1, clearly a 1-yard drop, 98 yards a game. Then the next year, he got back up to 4.7, 95 yards a game. But then last year, we dropped back down again. Now, typically, let's look at some other running backs. Part of what may have hurt him, as much as they'll say that he was working out in Cabo and that he was in shape, there's being in shape and then there's football shape. See, one of the things I think that's actually hurt football over the last few years was the last collective bargaining agreement, where they reduced the amount of two-a-days. You don't have two-a-days anymore. And they reduced the full practices. They don't have, tackling and things. And now we're doing even less of that because of the new collective bargaining agreement. And this year, because of the coronavirus, there may not even be 11 on 11. And you could see that the skills seem to be like tackling have kind of gone away. They've not been good. And you see a lot more soft tissue injuries. And I expect to see a lot more this year. But as we look through, let's look at some other guys. So we've seen, from 5.1 to 4.5, you can see every year that the yards per game have gone down. Now, also, the reverse of that is the Cowboys now depend more on the passing game with Dak Prescott and the great receivers. In essence, what you really want is a great mix of Dak, the receivers, and, of course, Zeke Elliott and even Tony Pollard to prolong his career. But let's look at some other players. Chris Johnson, wow. When we look at his career numbers here, let's take a peek. His rookie year averaged 4.9. His second year, 5.6. Had another 2,000-yard season. After that, dropped down to 4.3 and 4.0, and you could see he was never averaging anywhere close to his numbers. By that 4th year, he was literally a shell of himself. It was not the same guy. Let's take a look at Todd Gurley. Man, this is where you really start to get worried with the statistics on this. Todd Gurley averaged 4.8 yards as a rookie, 85, yards a game. His second year, 3.2, 55 yards a game. His third year, where they went to the Super Bowl, 4.7, 87. And then, boom, 4th year, 4.9, 89 yards, his best statistical season. And then all of a sudden, he dropped. He dropped big time. 3.8 yards a carry, and only 57. And you could see that he was no longer the bellwether back that he was before. Let's take a look at a couple more here. This is Alfred Morris, who, and this is where it's sad because running backs, there should be a different scale for them because you got to understand that running backs have such a short window that, generally speaking, your first contract is going to be your only contract. And Alfred Morris, who being a 6th-round draft pick, look at this, averaged 4.8 yards as a rookie, 100 yards per game. Outstanding, and was getting chump change. Still, the next year, 4.6 yards, 79 yards a game. Third year, still 4.1, pretty good. Still a 1,000-yard back, 67 a game. And then by his 4th year, 3.7, and you can see, on his way out the door. One final one we'll do here is Melvin Gordon. Again, this is where you start thinking, oh my God. Melvin Gordon, yard average, rookie, 3.5, 3.9, 3.9, 5.1 his 4th year. And then all of a sudden, 3.8. So, is Zeke Elliott AP? I think Zeke Elliott still has a lot of good miles and stuff left on him. But here's the thing. He might be the exception to the rule. But as I looked at last year, as many times as I saw Zeke doing this one, that I need a break, especially in key downs where it's 3rd down and 1, or not being able to deliver, or seeing him on some of those runs where it used to be that he would break a big one. It just didn't seem like he had that burst. And that's not to say anything against him. And that's not to say that this AFC executive is per se right. But you have to understand that running backs have a very, very short life expectancy. And that's why you hear running backs right now, hey, I just had a great season. I want a new contract or I want to get traded, because they know chances of getting that second big contract aren't real good. And you have to really, really, really be careful when you go through and pay running backs on that second contract. And like I said, I'm not worried about Zeke Elliott. I'm happy that he's there working out with the team and everything else, and he's been working out over the summer. And I think that he'll be fine this year, depending on how much we have. And one final note that may actually be good for the players. Typically, there really isn't an off season. You end up having the Super Bowl, and then you have, come March, OTAs and off-season workouts and things like that. So you're working constantly, that your body never really has a chance to, slow down. Well, this year, with not having OTAs, basically virtual ones, you're not having that wear and tear, because even though your practices aren't supposed to be padded practices and things, but Seattle, you've been fined a couple of times for actually having live drills without pads. This has actually given players' bodies a chance to really, really heal before going through the rigors of a season. So it'll be interesting to see if, not having that extra window, that these guys come out fresher from the beginning and have less soft tissue injuries, or if because they haven't had that extra work that they have more. So we'll see what happens. But maybe Zeke will come out like a man possessed with something to prove. I'd really like that one. So as always, guys, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. I'll see you soon.